This week we have samples sent in from Casio, all three of the new carbon core 10-year battery life watches. These are the GD010 watches. So let's flip the camera around and dive straight in. Big thanks to Casio, they sent me all three of these models in, so you'll get to see all of the color choices today, including this very fetching orange color, which I thought I would like, but it's probably my least favorite out of all of them, but we'll get to that later. These are sample watches as denoted by the little S that gets etched in the back here. I don't get to keep the watches, but they did kindly send me in this really cool pin badge. When I first saw it in the box, only this was sticking out, and I thought it was one of the new ring watches poking out, and I was like, oh, that'd be cool to review. But when I opened it, it was a pin badge, and to be fair, I'll get a lot more wear out of a pin badge than I ever would the new ring watch. Reference on this is the GD010-1. The green is -3 and the orange is -4. For some reason, there's no -2. Let me know in the comment section down below if you know which one the -2 one is. I'm guessing maybe that's a Japanese domestic model, perhaps. These are coming in at $99 on Casio's website, and the selling point of these ones, or the USPs of this one, is that it has their carbon core technology, which is the same as the 2100 series. And what that means is that the inner resin case is resin but reinforced with carbon fiber, which means it's a lot stronger and a lot lighter, so they can get it thinner. Although it's not that thin, this one's coming in at 16, just over 16 millimeters in thickness. And the other selling point is that it has a 10-year battery life. Because of the 10-year battery life, we do forego any of the other cool features that we've seen on G-Shocks recently. So there's no Bluetooth, there's no atomic timekeeping, there's no solar charging on this. And I guess you could argue that solar charging might give you a longer than 10-year battery life. And the features are also not basic, but they have essentially the time, world time, countdown timer, 5 alarms, and then the stopwatch. This might seem interesting, these features plus the 10-year battery life, because it's almost exactly the same features and the same battery life as our old friend, the Casio World Time, that I just recently reviewed on the channel. For reference, this one cost me $37. Now, there's one thing that I think that this watch does better than this G-Shock, and we'll go over that in the end. The other advantage of this, obviously, is that the LCD, in comparison certainly to the World Time, but other G-Shocks, the LCD is a lot bigger. When I first saw this, I thought, oh, this is a Mudman light version, but actually I think it's more the fact that it just has the bigger screen. It doesn't have any other bells and whistles to it. I think the countdown timer and the stopwatch really benefit from having this much larger LCD. So if you are using this for sporting purpose or whatever, then this is a huge advantage, having a big LCD like this on the G-Shock. It's a really tough, go anywhere, do anything digital watch. So if you don't like the G-Shock squares, or you'd prefer to have much bigger buttons than the squares, then this watch really is probably for you. The resin on here is G-Shock's bio-based resin, which we've seen on a number of watches now. This is a resin made from renewable sources, castor seed and corn oils. It doesn't feel really that much difference than their standard resin, and it won't biodegrade or break down over time. The watch features G-Shock's Super Illuminator, a high brightness auto LED backlight. This illuminates the entire screen. It's particularly bright, as you'd expect, on the positive displays. Let's just talk about the measurements now, because this is a big watch. The measurements are coming in at 54.9 from lug to lug, a 41.9 across the case, and then a 16.1 millimeter thickness. But as we know, because it's a G-Shock, you always have to measure, or I always like to measure from these bumpers, because that is what really protrudes on your wrist. And this is coming in at a whopping 68.1. Here you can see a wrist shot. For reference, my wrist is 7.2 inches. A lot of people like these bumpers, and it is there for a reason. It's a shock absorption system, so it will take a knot, sticks out, sort of similar to the Frogman that we looked at, or some of the much larger G-Shocks. Even though it's 16.1 millimeters in thickness, it still balances very nicely on the wrist. It's a comfortable watch. The resin band is comfortable. We've got just a single tang there instead of the double that we've seen on some of the other watches. This strap is removable. It's a 16 mil. I haven't seen any NATO adapters for it, but I'm sure there'll be some that come out very soon. But overall, it's just a solid G-SHOCK. Let's look at some of the colors. This is the all black version. And then we have this green version. How this green version differs is obviously the outer case color, but also we have yellow at the top here for some of the backing of the LCD, whereas it's gray on the black one. And then there's a bit slightly darker ring around the outside. This is on the inside of the mineral crystal, this ring. And then the orange, which I have to say I was most excited about seeing, but I have to say it's a little bit disappointing in person. It has the negative display, but also the backing of the LCD is in an orange as well. I don't think it's that visible. Let me just put the backlight on to show you. You can see it with the backlight, and in daylight, it's not too bad, but for me, it's got the negative LCD, and then they've used a yellow instead of they've used an orange, sorry, instead of the yellow that they've used here. And it's just not that easy to see. I wish this had been in a positive display actually, because the orange isn't in the face bright orange, it's a subtle orange, but I think this one looks probably the coolest, the black and orange, but I'm not a fan of the negative display on LCDs. There is one other thing that I'm not a huge fan of, and if we look at this world timer, if you move your wrist, this LCD does slightly distort, and by that I mean it goes slightly transparent. I'm not sure if that's part of the battery saving, but if I tilt the world time at the same time, you'll see that the world timer doesn't really distort. It stays a very, very contrasted black, whereas this one does go slightly transparent. Again, it's not so much trouble when you're outside, but under these LED studio lights, you can see that there is a slight transparent nature to the black, whereas on this world time, it doesn't really distort on the wrist at all. I'm not sure if that's to do with the larger display or maybe part of the battery saving functionality, but straight on, no problem. But as you can see, it goes slightly transparent. Let's do a quick shot so you can see how all of these wear on the wrist. For reference, mine is 7.2 inches. As you can see, slight overhang there. Next up is the green with its yellow accents on the dial. This is more like a forest green, I would say, instead of a military green, darker green. Then finally on the wrist is the orange. I really like this orange color. It's not in your face. It's not a vibrant orange. It's a more subtle orange, if there is such a thing as subtle orange. Again, has that negative LCD, which even under these studio lights, I'm struggling to see. Let me know in the comment section down below, which is your favorite color. Would you be adding one of these to your collection? More importantly, what did you think? Let me know in the comment section down below. If you're new to the channel, love it if you hit that subscribe button, hit the thumbs up and the bell notification. And I'll see you all next time on Casual Watch Reviews.